Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Low Season Traveller Insider Guides. I'm Jed Brown, your host for this week's episode, and today we're going to be speaking with a renowned travel writer about the Greek island of Rhodes, which is just starting to enter its quieter low season months of September, October and November. Rebecca Hall loves Greece. Not only does she eat, sleep and drink Greece, but she's lived in Greece for many, many years. And as a testament to her knowledge of Greece and indeed Rhodes itself, Rebecca writes for some of the world's leading travel publications, including The Rough Guides and Lonely Planet, among many others. So join myself and Rebecca and let's discover together why Rhodes is the perfect low season getaway this autumn. Enjoy. So, good morning, Rebecca. Great to have you on the Low Season Traveller Insider Guides podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm really good. Thanks for having me. It's really good to be here.
Oh, it's our absolute pleasure. So I guess, look, first of all, we just mentioned in the intro there about, obviously you do a lot of writing on Greece and you're somewhat of an expert on Greece. But just for all of our listeners at home, just give us an overview to your background of your relationship with Greece and indeed with Rhodes as well.
I was here actually as a English teacher initially, and then I started to, I fell into travel writing actually when I was here in 2014. I was asked by Rough Guide to help update the Rough Guide to the Dodecanese Islands, of which Rhodes is the capital, or one of the capitals. So I fell into it that way. I got into researching it and having a look around and travelling around and seeing the kind of best things for people to do, places to stay, places to eat, and really got under the skin of the island. And the island surrounding it. So it was a really nice introduction to travel writing, and it just kind of went from there, really. It was a really nice way to be able to focus my interests in really trying to promote Greece, because it was a time when Greece was getting very, very negative publicity because of the financial crisis and etc. And I really wanted to help Greece kind of positively promote itself. It was not getting good press, and I thought it's a shame because it's a beautiful country, beautiful islands like Rhodes, and beautiful people as well, really lovely people.
Yeah, they're very, very warm, hospitable people. And you're based in Athens right now. We're the end of August. How is everything in Athens? Obviously, we're sort of recovering from this kind of pandemic period where there's been an absence of tourists. How's it been this summer in Athens, and how are things there now?
Well, summer in general in Athens tends to be quite quiet because it's very, very hot. But I have to say, with regards to going back to what you just said about COVID, wow, I tell you what, I think Greece is probably one of the European countries that has really, really skyrocketed in tourism numbers. And it was one of the first countries to lift its restrictions within Europe quite early on in the season, from about, I think, end of April, beginning of May, if I'm correct. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but definitely by May. Because Greece, one of their main economic earnings is from tourism. So, they were keen to really encourage tourism, and they had strict restrictions during the COVID time, but then that meant that they could lift them by the time that it was sort of coming to a sort of slow, I wouldn't say end, dare I say end, touch wood.
Exactly.
But they have had, a lot of tourists coming in, particularly from outside within the EU. They've had a lot of influx of American flights as well. So there's a lot more American flights this year. So Athens in general and Greece in general as well has been a very, very popular destination this year in 2022, which is lovely to see. Really lovely.
Yeah, I bet you kind of miss all the tourists when when it's been sort of stopped, and it must be nice then to be able to welcome them back, because a huge part of you kind of touched on this there, excuse me, at the beginning. A huge part of the Greek psyche seems to be about about hospitality. Really, it's almost like the reason that the raison d'être almost for Greeks is they just love to be hospitable and welcoming, and therefore it must have hit them pretty hard not having tourists, I guess.
Yeah, like I say, their main economic structure seems to be tourism. I mean, it would be lovely to have the right tourism, like not certainly not over tourism.
Mm.
That's something that is really not encouraged at all. It's horrible to have anywhere, I suppose, that has over tourism. But yes, Greeks definitely are very, very friendly to strangers. They're very, very. It's just embedded in their DNA. They're very, very friendly people in general. Or has this has been my personal experience, and people that have visited, they've said they find that there's just doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for it. A Greek will be friendly to you because they like you. If they don't like you, they won't bother with you. They won't waste time being two-faced. They just won't waste time being all smiley and then not smiley behind your back. They just, if they don't like you, that's it. Fine, okay, well, we don't like you, so we'll move on. But if they do like you, that's it. Very, very friendly, very, very kind, and very giving to people as well. Wanting people to, they're proud of their country, rightly so as well. When you look at the history of Greece, they have a right to be proud of their country, and they want to show off their country to people, to visitors. They want to show off their food, so it's hospitable. It's definitely hospitable.
Yeah, I love that, and that's certainly been my finding on the times when I've been to Greece as well. But we're here today to talk more specifically about Rhodes, of course, and that's Rhodes is an island which I visited for the first time earlier this year, and it blew me away. If I'm honest with you, Rebecca, partly because we've always known, certainly in the UK market, we've known that Rhodes exists. And
Yeah.
there's been regular flights to Rhodes, and I always thought of Rhodes as a sun and sand destination. I didn't really know what else there was there. And when I got there, it really it took my breath away, actually, for how beautiful it was, but also the culture and the heritage. Tell us a little bit about your first experiences with Rhodes, and give us a little bit of an overview to Rhodes for listeners possibly like me prior to my visit, who might not know really what Rhodes has to offer.
Yeah, it's certainly not a what I term as a fly and flop island. Fly there and flop on the beach. It does have beaches, so if you're wanting this, it's certainly you can do that. It has an international airport that accepts flights during flights from major European destinations in the summer, so it's easily reachable. Even in the winter, it has connections from Athens. But I would say you touched on it as well. Actually, you said about the heritage, and it's a very, very it used to belong in the, I mean, because majority of Greece, or Greece in general, was taken over by the Ottomans. So during the Ottoman period, it's got an eclectic history, and because of its location near Turkey as well, it's very, very near the Turkish coast. So if you walk through the place called the Old Town of Rhodes, which is near which is the main place to go, you feel like you're in a set of Game of Thrones. You really do. I mean, you've got tiny cobbled streets that were designed to confuse invading pirates, and it's
And
still
tourists, apparently.
and tourists. Yeah, it's actually still maintained to this day. I mean, you've got cobbled streets, you've got back lanes, you can wander around them, and it's actually one of UNESCO have. I think I can't remember what year they did it, but it is actually a protected site, and it's one of the oldest European living old towns in Europe, which means that people actually live behind its castle walls. You've got Greek soap operas blaring out of the tiny houses that are there because the Greek people are listening. So people live there, people still trade there in the shops. It's really a part of their heritage, and it was a part of the Night of St. John's, which then went on to Malta after Rhodes. I think people if they go to Malta, sorry if I'm jumping ahead because you might wanted to mention that, but
Sure.
I've been to Malta myself, and I've been to Mdina, which is I think one of the older capitals, and there's a real similarity between that place in Malta and the old town of Rhodes, and it's because of the Knights of St. John's. And you've got the old palace there in Rhodes. You've got it's just incredible, really. It's very, very atmospheric, incredibly
Yeah.
atmospheric.
I think it's right. I don't know if the guys in Rhodes or Rhodes Tourism, because sometimes they don't like the comparisons. But yes, I was the same when I first went to the Old Town. It did remind me of a little bit of some of the places in Malta, just because it's so ancient. And like you say, what's wonderful is it's, like you pointed out, it's a living working town. And there's something fabulous about that. And
For
we sort of
sure.
touched on this before when we've spoken. But I was speaking to a guy, a restaurateur there in the Old Town, and he brought me along after. He was, again, as with all the people that we met when we were there, so passionate about his home, and he'd been living there for generations. And he said, "Look, once I finish work, let me bring you down some of the old streets, and I'll show you some of the houses beyond some of the old streets, so you could really sort of see that these were sort of houses that people live in." And he was telling us where they used to play when they were kids in this wonderful old town. I mean, it must have been great being kids living in Rhodes Old Town.
The
But yeah,
generation. Yeah.
oh, an absolutely magical place. Um, and then beyond the Old Town, what else is there for people to do? So obviously the Old Town has got so much going on for it, and you could spend a lot of time there. But then outside of the Old Town, because it's a large enough island, Roads, it's not tiny, is it?
No, it's not tiny. It's a very big island. I mean, like I say, I mean, the Old Town is one of my favorite places, but I would also recommend people go to Lindos. You could go to Lindos. I mean, I'm not entirely sure literally where it is. It is not, it's about, I think about 30, just over 30 miles from Rhodes. So it's not far. You can drive or you could take a taxi, I suppose. But there you've got if you want to relax on the beach, you can. And it's got St Paul's Bay there, and St Paul's Bay is a lovely place. It's continually voted one of the best beaches within Greece, in general, and it's got the blue waters, and you can relax on the beach, or there's a tiny little church, which is the Church of St Paul there, and you can take your photos there. But at the top there, so sort of framed looking down on it, is the Acropolis. Is another Acropolis, so you can actually walk up to the Acropolis. I wouldn't suggest doing it midday,
Yeah,
or if you're going low season, maybe low season is actually better
yeah.
for it, to be honest. So you can walk up there and you can look at the Acropolis, which has got these sweeping views out to sea, and you can look down on St Paul's Bay, so you've got a different angle from there, so different vantage point. It's beautiful. And then what used to be an old fishing village, but it's sort of grown in size, is Lindos itself. Um, Lovely church in there. And also further on from there, which is one of my favorite places, going up into the mountains slightly. There's a mountain called Profitis Elias, and it's basically hidden there in the forest, within the pine forest and the trees, etc. Is the old summer residence of Mussolini, because when the Italians had occupied Rhodes during the Second World War. Mussolini himself never actually went and spent the summers there. It was one of his advisors that actually lived there.
Right.
But I think what happened is, obviously then the Second World War finished, and it just fell into disrepair. So it's wonderful to go and walk through the forest. It's a lovely walk through the forest anyway, because you might see some rare wildlife, and suddenly you come across this abandoned mansion.
Oh, weird.
So yeah, it is. It's a bit surreal actually, but it's yeah, it's different from spending the day at the beach. So it's very good.
Definitely. Yeah, that's somewhere that I just never really sort of heard of. Who would know that Mussolini had a had a hideout in Rhodes? Not many of us would have known that.
No, for
Um,
sure.
and who owns it now? Does anybody own it now, or is it just
Well,
sitting
I
there?
actually read something recently that apparently in 2014, which ironically was the year that I started researching for Rough Guides, those island chains and roads in particular, was that the Greek state was trying to sell it off, to try and maybe get some investors, maybe to make it into a hotel or something. But so it's still for sale at the moment.
Right. There we go. If any
So
if any of our listeners out there have got a few euros spare. God knows how much it would cost, but and it might need a bit of work doing by all accounts.
Bit of work, and maybe, let's be honest, the Greek bureaucracy along with it. But
Yeah, it could be a bit of a challenge.
yes, it would be a lot of a challenge. But actually, it's nice as it is. It kind of, it almost retains history as it is. Just keeping it as an abandoned place in a way.
Yeah,
It's kind of, almost nice to kind of keep it so that you never lose that memory of what once was. So
yeah, I
yeah.
love that. And when we're talking there about Lindos and about the sort of the village, um, we were fortunate enough to sort of go there, and it's probably very very obvious to you, but for me it wasn't. I've never been to these places like Santorini, and we sort of see these on the images of tourism for Greece. We see the whitewashed buildings and everything else, but I thought that town of Lindos was absolutely beautiful, because it's on the hillside and it's these narrow walkways and everything is whitewashed, obviously, to reflect the sun or whatever. There was something pretty cool about that. And I just remember thinking, we were there in the low season of April. And it was relatively cool. It was pleasant. You're in shorts and t-shirts, but you certainly weren't sweltering. But I just remember thinking, and it was quite empty. Everything was open, but there was not a huge amount of tourists there.
Mm.
And I just remember thinking, is that a sort of a viable alternative to these places like Santorini, which we know have suffered in the past with over tourism. There's more than just Santorini, and I'm not knocking Santorini, but places like Lindos, maybe are they a bit overlooked? Do you think sometimes?
I think there's a lot of Greek islands that are overlooked, but yes, I mean, Rhodes is much further south, and maybe Santa. But I mean, it's get atable from Athens. People can fly to Athens, and you can get a ferry to Rhodes. Very, very pleasant, actually, overnight
Yeah.
ferry to Rhodes. I mean, it's almost like a
Oh,
mini cruise ship, actually.
yeah.
The ships, the ferries in Greece are wonderful. Or you can fly direct from to Rhodes, okay, in summer. But yes, in the sort of like low season, you can actually fly from Athens. I would suggest actually combining it with maybe a city break in Athens first,
Lovely.
seeing the Acropolis of Athens, obviously, and then
Yeah.
maybe comparing it to the Acropolis of Lindos.
Yeah.
But yes, it is a shame. It's don't negate places like Rhodes in low season. There is more to, although Santorini and Mykonos are obviously what I term them as your Disney islands, because everybody's heard of them and everybody
Yeah.
sees pictures of them and picture postcards, etc. But I mean, there's so many islands in Greece, Rhodes included. It's a shame that the people don't tend to go there, and people tend to equate islands with going just to lie on the beach and swim, as we've said previously. But there is so much more to it. There's history, there's culture, there's tradition, there's gastronomy, there's just everything.
Yeah, love that. Now, gastronomy. That's one of the reason when we speak to people about low season travel and low season travelers out there. Two of the topics which come up time and time again as to why people travel in the low seasons. One is cultural heritage, because the
Mm-hmm.
cultural heritage is there all year round, whether it's music, dance, or anything else. The other thing, probably linked because it's part of the cultural heritage, is the gastronomy. It's for the food, and that's one of the reasons why, certainly why I travel a lot as well, is I love to try different foods and different tastes and everything else. What kind of dishes and foods can people expect when they visit Rhodes?
I think with Rhodes in particular, they've got a real love of the chickpea, and I tell you why. Because chickpea tends to be a very Ottoman dish. So, for example, hummus is not a Greek dish. Please remind your listeners that it's
Yeah,
not.
they are now reminded.
Um, so, for example, you have a very Rhodian dish called, let me see if I'm pronouncing this correctly, lacan or lacana, and that is actually, it's like a stew but with goat. It's a combination of goat and chickpeas, and tomatoes, and you put it in the oven overnight for the chickpeas to actually, germinate, etc. And then you've got this very thick stew with tomato sauce and goat and chickpea and herbs and salt and pepper and deep fried onions. It's gorgeous. So that's one of their very, very favorite dishes. And also one of my favorites tends to be something called Pitarodia. And Pitarodia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly as well, with my terrible Greek accent, it's like, I think the way to describe it is squashed meatballs. Okay.
Okay.
So it's meatballs that tend to be a little bit sort of patties almost. Let's call them patties.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have anything in them from mincemeat with parsley and mint in them, or again with the chickpeas. You can have different vegetables like cauliflower or pumpkin or mushrooms, and again tomatoes, and also zucchini, or as we call it, I think in the UK you'd call it courgette, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's some very, very favourite dishes. And of course your usual kind of dips like your tara masalata and your shiki. And it's as with most places in Greece, garlic. Garlic is very, very heavy in the sauces. So make sure you're all eating sort of similar dishes.
Make sure you're all stinking of garlic at the same time.
Yes, basically.
Wonderful. And then when we talk about low seasons, we know that in some destinations there tends to be festivals or festivities that sometimes happen in the low seasons, bizarrely. So they're very sort of local festivals, I guess. And one of the ones which we missed out on when we were there, unfortunately, by by a couple of days, was the Greek Orthodox Easter.
Oh, wonderful.
What's that like? Because everyone was telling us when we were there, they were saying you need to stay an extra 3 days to be here for the Easter, to see what Easter is like in Greece and in Rhodes. And we just couldn't make it work, unfortunately. What's Easter like in
I mean, Easter is the time to actually be in Greece and Rhodes in general, to be honest, because it's a bigger celebration than Christmas. What people tend to do is you've got 40 days before Good Friday, people are fasting, which means they're not eating they're not eating products that have red blood in them. So they're not eating products, and also they're not eating dairy products that come from animals with red blood. So they're really, so if you are being a strict faster, you are not actually eating those kind of products. I think it tends to be a little bit more lax now, so people are maybe a little bit more relaxed about it, but really, really strict Orthodox religious people don't. But then by the time Thursday comes, so you've got Maundy Thursday, people tend to go out, the kids tend to go out and collect some flowers. And then on Good Friday, that's a very, very mournful day. So it's the church bells tend at midnight to sort of toll. And on Good Friday, the children again and the kind of community decorate what's called it's like a tomb. And it's carried around the streets at night time. So when I say, I mean not a tomb in the British sense, but it's like a coffin, I suppose. And they decorate the coffin with flowers. And in the evening on Good Friday, they tend to walk around the streets. So you get lots of different villages, and wherever there's a church, you've got processions around the streets, and sometimes they all congregate in the centre. So that's good to see. And then Good Saturday, in the evening on Good Friday, they tend to break their fast. So at 11 p.m, they'll go to the restaurant and they'll have some fish to kind of try and break their fast gently on their stomach.
Yeah.
And then Easter Saturday, they start to prepare something that they're going to eat in the evening, which is called Magaritsa, and that's basically tripe.
Okay. Yeah.
It's to be completely honest and blunt, it's the innards of either a goat or a lamb, and it's used because Easter Saturday evening, once you've been to church, once the priest says very loudly, Christos anesti, that means Christ is risen, everybody is very, very happy. You've got fireworks going off, and you've got firecrackers going off. They all rush to the restaurants or to home, and they start to eat this Magaritsa because it settles your stomach. You can't, after 40 days of fasting, suddenly then eat a huge meat meal. So it's kind of like lines your stomach. And then Easter Sunday, that's when you have your celebration with either kid, which is a baby goat, or lamb. Lamb tends to be traditional.
Hmm.
and everybody's eating lamb and they're going crazy eating the meat. So it's sort of one extreme to another. No meat for
Yeah.
40 days, eating the tripe to line your stomach, and then on the Easter Sunday you eat you'll see. I mean, you'll see lambs being prepared on the spit in the streets even.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so people, they have big community get-togethers. I think that's one of the main things about Greece and Rhodes in general. Actually, is a very, very community spirit.
Mm.
So wherever there's a church, you've got processions, and you've got people that, if they see you on their own, they'll always just say, "Come and join us," and they'll, you
Oh,
walk in
lovely.
procession with them, and you join in with the food with them. If they see you're not eating, they'll probably say to you, "Why aren't you eating? Eat food."
Yeah, fair play. I love that. It sounds like a wonderful occasion to, for again for anybody out there that wants to really get under the skin of the destination and really get to meet the locals. Then being there during those kind of times when they have those kind of festivities is probably quite a good time to be there. I would have thought. I'd love that. I'd love to get involved. Because
Yeah, and
it's not very touristy, is it? It's not very, you know what I mean? It's the local tradition.
it's a very, very local tradition. People that only come to Greece frequently will know that Greek Easter is celebrated like that. Like I say, Christmas is not as celebrated as Easter, but it's really, really worth it to understand Greek traditions, Greek gastronomy, Greek history, and Greek, all of this rolled into one. You've got
Mm,
it there. As we were talking earlier about, what Greece is great for in low season, when you've got it all there in one, in a big celebration at Easter.
yeah, I love
So
that.
it's the perfect time to come.
It is. And now we're recording this at the end of August. I don't know what is the date today. 29th of August. There we go. We're recording this on the 29th of August. And I suppose we're just coming into we're starting to come into the low season period, once we start to get to, in particular, I think October and November, it's really more sort of the low season. It's certainly the quieter time in Rhodes. Apart from that being less crowded with much less tourists, and we know that the prices are lower as well, so there's good deals to be had. Um, what's the weather like? Because people, I think sometimes, not that when we travel in the low seasons, we don't travel purely for the weather. Naturally, we're traveling to go to the destination and get under the skin of the destination. But
Mm.
it's nice to have at least mild weather. But just to have an understanding, what is the weather like in Rhodes in kind of October, November time? Could you still swim in the sea? Are you still out in a t-shirt and shorts? What's it like?
Yeah, I would say so, because you see, the sea in general tends to be, the heat of it tends to be 2 months behind the land temperature.
Right.
So the sea temperature in October is going to be the land temperature that it was in August. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
It's actually one of the best times to be swimming, to be honest. You're without the crowds, plus you've got the ability to go swimming, to go scuba diving, it's brilliant. And the average temperature during the day is sort of like mid-20s, to be honest.
Lovely.
So yeah, which if you
Yeah.
compare it, I suppose, to the UK, yes, it is a perfect time. And you haven't got a lot of rain. I mean, in the evenings, because the only thing you get is humidity.
Hmm.
So do bring a light sweater, because it can get quite humid.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, doing that. But come have your swims, come and see the old town. Get involved in the some whatever else you can see. I mean, there's actually Butterfly Valley. I don't think I've mentioned that.
No.
That's a place not far from Lindos. It's on the way to Lindos, actually. And May is one of the best times to see that. So that's again the start of the kind of low season. But you can go any time of the year. It's where butterflies come and migrate to on their way to Africa.
Wow.
But it's still a lovely place to visit, and it's another low season place to come and visit.
Yeah.
So
Love that. I love that. That's wonderful. Well, I think if all of our listeners out there, I think if they're anything like me, they'll be kind of tempted to have a look on Skyscanner or TUI or any one of these organisations and see what deals there are for roads in the next couple of months, because it sounds like it's a great time to go, and certainly be lovely without the crowds. Pleasant temperatures, perfect swimming temperatures, great food. I mean, what's not to love, to be honest?
Definitely,
um,
yeah.
but listen, we're just about out of time. I want to thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing your insights with us and your expertise with us this week on the Rhodes podcast. Hey, listen, we'd love to get you back to talk about some of the other islands. I know you're really passionate about some of the lesser known islands in Greece that don't always get the same attention. So it'd be great to have you back at some stage in the future, so we can talk a little bit more about some of those. So I'll be able to learn an awful lot on those, because I don't know anything about hardly any of the islands. So I'd be looking forward to that too.
Great. Well, it would be great to come back. Thank you very much for having me to sort of show you, as you say, my roads. And yeah, I'd love to show you more of my Greece. It would be lovely.
Oh, we'll definitely sort that out. So where are you off to next? Remind us.
I'm actually going to be touring the Peloponnese, which is on the mainland, and it's going to be on the mainland. And I'm looking at this for another guidebook company, and touring around it probably for about 3 weeks, so I can sort of like have a look at the gastronomy, the culture, the traditions, and also, you know, what there is to do there, alternative things to do for a new guidebook. So it will be great.
Oh, fabulous. Well, we'll have to get you back on the podcast to talk about that when it's fresh in your mind.
I will.
In the next couple of months. That'll be wonderful. But for now, Rebecca, thank you again so much for your time and your expertise, and looking forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks very much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure. Cheers.
So there you have it. Are you tempted by a low season getaway to Rhodes this autumn? Maybe you've been to Rhodes during the low season months and would like to share your experiences with us. If so, do drop us a line at editor@lowseasontraveller.com, and perhaps we can feature your story in the next edition of the Low Season Traveller magazine. And if you'd like to learn more about the many wonderful experiences you can have in Rhodes during the quieter low season months, then you can read our guide to the low season in Rhodes on lowseasontraveller.com. But that's our show for this week. Thanks as always for your company, and if you've enjoyed this podcast, it would mean the world to us if you could leave us a positive rating and review on your podcast app. Have a great week wherever you are. Stay healthy, stay safe, keep your travel dreams alive, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn to be the first to hear our latest low season stories, articles and guides. Finally, remember that travel is always better and fairer for the planet, the local communities and you the travellers when it's without the crowds.